What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is founder and CEO of Harvest Restaurant Group, Chip Grabowski. Chip was exposed to the hospitality industry as a child because his parents owned and operated several restaurants and hotels in northern New Jersey, making hospitality second nature to Chip. In between working, Chip developed a love for hockey, and after his college team played in 2 national championships, he made his way into training camp with the NHL's New Jersey Devils. Now, the training camp didn't go as Chip had planned, which led him to hang up his skates. But from that, Chip and his future wife and business partner, Cheryl, built a restaurant company, and one of their greater joys comes from seeing their children, now the 4th generation, involved in the business. He is a voracious learner and consumes more leadership podcasts than anyone I know. So I'm excited to learn from Chip today. At the end of these conversations, you often hear me say to our guests, I took pages of notes from this discussion. Well, recently, a few of you asked if we could make those notes available to our podcast family, and the answer is absolutely. We now have it set up so that when you visit corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/107, you can download today's notes and reflection questions so that you can include corporate competitor content into your personal growth plan.
Jacques was an incredible communicator. Every day in warm-ups, Jacques would always use that time to skate around to multiple players. Today, I ask our leaders, grab a general manager and do those 3 questions of what did you like about last week? What didn't you like about last week? And how can I help you? Is an awareness that you care about them, but you're also communicating to learn if there are things that stick out that we can change and help our operations team.
Chip, thanks so much for joining us.
Don, it's a pleasure. Anytime I can have a conversation with you, I always continue to learn. I'm very grateful for that. Love the podcast, love the books, everything, and very grateful for our relationship.
You grew up in Jersey, and at a young age, you were working at the restaurants and the bars and the hotels that your parents owned and operated. So hospitality became second nature to you, but you loved hockey. And there comes a point where you have to look at the potential future that you might have playing a sport that you love or getting involved in the family business. Now, walk me through that moment when you have to decide, is it time to put the skates up and get to work in the restaurant business for good?
Well, the great thing was across from my folks' business, restaurant and hotel, there was a skating rink. It was great as a young kid. My mom would drop the other kids at school and take me down. She would cook breakfast there and sort of sit in the corner of the coffee shop. But a lot of times I'd bring my skates and was able to go across the street and skate. Later, as I started my schooling, after school, I'd go down. My mom would be upstairs doing the books, and then I'd be able to go across to the rinks. The whole time that I was learning about their business and doing all the jobs growing up, 10 years old in the kitchen, doing salads, dishwash, all those positions, I was continuing to play the game of hockey all the way through. I had a tremendous passion for the game of hockey, but I also was really enjoying my folks' business as well. In my whole career, I had felt like I was always had the ability to step up to the next level, all through Pee Wee and Bantam and through high school. But when I stepped on the ice in training camp, I was lining up in the face-off circle, and I'm looking at Mel Bridgman, who I watched as a kid and as a battler, a number 1 overall pick, I think, ever in the draft, and just a phenomenal career. Behind him, I'm looking at Chico Resch, 4 Stanley Cups with the Islanders that I watched as a kid. And the rookie class of that year were guys like Kirk Muller and Pat Verbeek and John McClain and Ken Danico. These guys all went on to be perennial all-stars. So all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm here in a select group and everybody's competing probably for 2 or 3 spots. They dropped the puck and we started to play. And it was the first time, Don, that I was like, this is another level. The passing, the shooting, the speed of the game, I thought was, 4 or 5 levels than I was coming out of college. I quickly assessed that, okay, is this something that I'm going to be able to adapt to? Boy, in order for me to do this and be successful, this is going to be a difficult journey. I'll probably have to spend time in minor hockey, and who even knows if I'll come out of that and be able to play at this level. In those nights during camp, I would lay awake in bed at night and think of, is this really the career I'm going to take? I had met the love of my life and my bride now of 38 years. We had already talked about planning on getting married and raising a family. And I really had enjoyed the time in the restaurant. So should I just get the best out of this that I possibly can and see where I end up? I came to the conclusion that, you know what, it may be time that use this to my advantage and learn a lot about the people here and use these lessons for me further in my career.
I'm listening to you, and part of you is saying, almost from the beginning, you started realizing I'm in over my head.
Yes.
Well, every time you open a restaurant, you're in over your head too. But today, your mind allows you to maneuver through that challenge. In that one, it almost feels like from the very beginning, you began to realize I may not be able to do this one. I'm wondering if you look back now at that window, had you approached it maybe with a slightly different mindset, might you have done something different?
I'm a person about no regrets. You make a decision, stand by it, move forward. But I had a great buddy of mine that also was in training camp that I played a lot of hockey with. He went on and bounced around all through minor hockey. You know, he'd call me from Toledo, he'd call me from Carolina, and I'd listen to his stories. Those sort of helped me to say that, you know, I really do think I made the right decision in what I did. And when I look where I am today with the family around me and the life that I live, I truly believe I made the right decision. No regrets.
Your success has borne that out. You mentioned Plattsburgh. When you were there, you lost the national championship game
Twice.
You've gone through everything that it requires for you to get to the national championship game. You lose, and you got to come back, and the next year believe that better is ahead for you. Talk to me about something you learned from that period of loss at a really high place that could help you build through for the next year.
We had a phenomenal team in my sophomore year. We were very talented with a group of people that believed in each other. When we got to the final game, we battled in that final. I think that we lost by a goal, maybe 4-3. Don, sometimes when you get, they always say, well, you get the wisdom and you learn what it's about. It wasn't like we were just happy to be there. I knew how hard we worked to get there and the good fortune. And going forward, just wake up the next day saying, hey, we earned it to get here, but we need to work harder. We fell short here. You got to push yourself further. What is it? Is it in my conditioning? Is it in our systems? Is it in our learning? How can we get back here? We probably started that next day, getting out there and getting at it, even getting together still in the spring and working through training in the summer to make sure we finish the following year.
Isn't that one of the great things that sports teaches us as business leaders? Yes, you were at the pinnacle and then it didn't happen. You can whine about it for a little bit, but at the end of the day, what you really have to do is get up the next day and say, I got to go a little harder. I got to give a little more. What made that group such a group of great teammates? Walk me through that and what it's taught you as a business leader.
First, you establish trust. You get to know each other. Granted, remember I said we had French Canadian, English Canadian. I had 2 kids that couldn't even speak English at the beginning. So you're adjusting to a language barrier as well. What's essential is everybody understanding the mission, everyone understanding the systems and believing in them, believing in the forechecks and power plays that we were doing and getting everybody on the same page and trusting each other, knowing that we're going to push each other in practice. I'm going to try and beat you in conditioning. You're going to try and beat me. Down, it comes from trust and then believing in the mission.
I love that systems point. How do you translate that into your business today? I mean, the restaurant world, it's moving constantly.
Agreed. The way to be consistent and successful is within the systems. You're constantly trying to better those systems. And Don, those come from when the manager gets out of the car and does his walkthrough of the entire property, checks the building throughout, right into the food, the line checks and the tasting of the product. Each category of each role has systems in place, and we have harvest ways and harvest habits that are for our staff to follow. If someone asks to go to the restroom, you're never pointing to anybody. We're walking that guest to the restroom.
That's a Ritz-Carlton habit.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
Right.
Those little simple details within these systems are the challenge of being successful.
It's pretty powerful.
At the beginning in my career in the restaurant business, I'm not sure I really focused there enough. As I started to grow and the company started to grow, you couldn't be in the same location all the time and watch on a day-to-day basis. The systems became more and more important. Today, I think it's one thing I'm proud of throughout our organization, through the 14 businesses. We have a lot of great systems and we wake up every day to try and make them better.
One of the things I love is how much you spend constantly studying what it is that other successful organizations are doing. Has nothing to do with whether or not they're in your industry or not, because success travels.
Exactly. Cheryl and I travel throughout the country. We try and pick the organizations that we believe in and know that have the same values that we do, so that whether we're in a hotel or we're in a restaurant, we're always looking to see of anything that we can emulate or learn from to bring back to our own organization. And you pointed out the Ritz. My son, Jake, went through their training classes, and Disney for that matter, trying to continually learn how to be better.
Boy, that's how success creates itself. One of your hockey coaches in college, Jacques Lemaire, was part of 8 Stanley Cup winning teams. Give me a leadership lesson that you learned from him that you still use today.
I would tell you that he was a great players coach. We did a lot of traveling by bus. There was always a group in the back of the bus playing cards. And every once in a while, Jacques would come back and, hey, can I jump into the game? And we'd be playing and betting. And he'd take off his Stanley Cup ring and throw it in. I raise you 1 Stanley Cup ring. He always liked to have fun and really communicate to the players too, as well, that he was a players coach. I know that a lot of the French kids that were on the team as well, they were so intrigued. And every rink we went in, people before the game wanted to come up and shake Jacques' hand and introduce him.
Yeah. What
a winner. His intensity. Sometimes he'd come out on the ice and put his shin guards on and jump in the scrimmage. I think he just wanted to exercise, and an incredible competitor. He didn't care that he was playing at the college level. He was playing at his A level when he came out on the ice.
Yeah.
He had coached in junior hockey first. And prior to Plattsburgh, he followed the Red Army team and learned all about the Russian training things, which he brought to us. And then he wanted to learn the college game. So here's a guy that's accomplished what he's accomplished, trying to learn and get better. What a blessing. Jacques was an incredible communicator. Every day in warmups, we were on the ice probably for 2 hours. You did a 15-minute stretch. And Jacques would always use that time to skate around, and he'd come up next to me and he may start to talk to me about something that happened the night before or something that he saw in practice. He was a centerman, I was a centerman. He may give me some insight on how I can do better against a lefty or righty strategy-wise. And he'd sort of go around to multiple players, and he would do that every day. It was a great way to connect. He wasn't a guy, at least in college, that would challenge players publicly unless you challenged him verbally or by something that you did that was against his way. Then he would publicly challenge you. But if you just made a mistake and he knew that it wasn't intentional, he'd always wait 3 shifts later when you came off the ice. So it's not like you came off the ice and made a mistake and boom, his coach is in your ear yelling and screaming. That's not what he represented. Today, I ask our leaders to do those same touches. when they're going through the restaurants, our directors will grab a general manager and do those 3 questions of what did you like about last week? What didn't you like about last week? And how can I help you? And that little touch to people is an awareness that you care about them, but you're also communicating to learn if there are things that stick out that we can change and help our operations team.
Management by walking around. Sometimes that's one of those places that we forget. We're so caught up and we're in our space and we're in our business and our office, and we don't make time to walk the building. That idea that you developed out of that 3 questions that you ask your leaders to make sure they're always asking of those they serve. What did you like about last week? What did you not like? And then what can I do to help you? Man, boy, that's gold right there. I'm all about that. By the way, did Jacques ever lose a ring in a card game?
He was always quick to grab it. But some days he'd come with multiple ones out of his hands just to
just to really make sure you knew that he was ready to raise it one more time. So the list of things that you credit to your time on the ice in your business life is pretty long. Your discipline, your attention to detail, competitiveness, team player skills. Give me an example of how you took one of those habits developed in hockey and built it into your professional life today. Is there some place where you've used one of those habits to make your company more successful?
The team concept we instill in the restaurants and to today, and keep trying to evolve the understanding of everybody working together instead of individuals. We never took the traditional server gets 3 tables. That's their only responsibility. They only take care of those guests at their 3 tables. They don't interact with anybody else. And the actual compensation comes from those 3 tables. From day one, we put in a system that was more team oriented. We do start with the server having 3 tables, but the compensation was pool house. So it was shared amongst everybody. And that team system, like by example, would consist of, if I'm walking by somebody else's table and there's an empty plate, I'm going to grab that plate and bring it to the dish room. If I walk into the kitchen and they're yelling for hands, I'm going to grab food that's not necessarily to my table and bring them to another table. If I walk by the hostess stand and the hostess happens to be seating a table and I see guests waiting, I'm actually going to introduce to the guest and seat that table. So at an end of a night, all the servers would get a cut broken apart by the total gratuities that are taken in that evening. Things happen. You could get a table and someone could order $1,000 bottle of wine, and that person's gratuities that particular night are going to be a lot stronger than the person next to him. Or the host is giving the best tables to their friends and creating, controversy as it relates to that. This takes it all out and makes everybody on a level playing field, and it enforces and encourages people to help each other, and it builds better camaraderie and better vision.
And if the compensation is good, you get more talent, which is even better.
Exactly.
So, there are a lot of organizations that call themselves teams. Truth is, they're not. They just happen to work at the same place. If you're coaching someone listening to this podcast who is getting ready to lead a team or is leading a team today, what are some ways that you would help them walk their group of individuals over the bridge and create a team?
First and foremost is believing in the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish. It's very hard when the leadership isn't believing. I think it becomes very difficult to manage. Purpose is a big part of our organization. We're trying to explain to our teammates that they're not there just to take an order. They're there to give people enjoyment. That's a purpose. And we have a hugging culture. Any employee at any time, we give them any budget that they need in order to make a guest experience better. We had a guest that was eating lunch in our restaurant. He lived in Connecticut. His wife had just beaten cancer. So everyone in the office had taken him out to celebrate. And he came back to the hostess stand and he said, look, I'm here celebrating, but I need to get a train to take back to Connecticut. Can you call me a cab? And in a heartbeat, the manager happened to be standing there. He's like, oh, no problem, sir. Just tell me when you're done and you can jump in my car and I'll take you up to the train. The guy finishes his lunch, gets the manager, and they're driving. And he starts to explain to the manager what he's there doing. And the manager says, we got to stop and pick up flowers for you to bring to your wife. So he pulls the car into the florist, goes in himself, buys the flowers. This guest is probably sitting in the car going, what am I getting punked? Or anyway, he drives the guest up and gets on the train and calls his wife on the train. And he says, you're not going to believe today, I had this unbelievable lunch. And she said, that's interesting. Can you tell me where you had lunch? Oh, I had lunch at the Huntley Tavern. And she said, well, you're not going to believe this, but someone just showed up at our front door with a bottle of champagne in congratulations for me and celebrating of today and beating cancer. The guy got choked up trying to put together, how did this happen? It happens from giving other people, humans, the ability to do things for other people that make their day better as well. And that's a big deal in our company. We get together every month. Each restaurant goes through what their hug award is for their particular restaurant. And then there's an employee hug. And some of those are just outstanding as well. And there are many times in that room that people are in tears, either giving the story or hearing them. So I'm very proud of all our people and how they accomplished that. It's a great part of our culture.
You talk about purpose, you talk about mission, and you could argue, I'm running a restaurant. I hear that from organizations all the time. We're just an accounting firm. You don't have a lot of opportunity touch points. The truth is, they are all there. You just have to go find them. And what you give your team is permission to find them.
Yes.
Give me step one. If you're trying to coach another leader of some other organization, how to create that kind of thought process or culture, where would you offer someone else a suggestion on where to start?
Just observing what's happening within your business, whatever it may be, and look for the opportunities that are right in front of you that you see, but you don't see. And then communicating to your team. I was with my family in one of our restaurants, seated close to the door and watching as the guests were leaving, that our staff members would be giving hugs to our teammates. Wow, how come this isn't happening in all our restaurants, but it's happening here? And then listening and engaging the people that are working there and get an understanding from them on how they're going about doing this. We have great trust in everybody that works around us. Where we are today, Cheryl and I know it's purely by the people around us. Every day we wake up, how are we going to get better today? How are we going to get better? And asking them on ideas that could help benefit the business as well.
But it's also giving permission. That decision you made to start giving them the freedom to budget into that bottle of champagne, that probably took all your margin out of your lunch.
Absolutely.
And yet that's okay. They will not anytime soon forget that lunch, and your staff won't forget it either.
Yeah. And when they go home and can tell that story to their spouse or their family, this is what happens within this organization. It creates more pride into what we do. And trust me, we have our days, but it's one part of the culture that we're all very proud to be part of.
Well, the way you get through your days, the tough days, is to have those good ones.
Exactly.
You know, Ernst & Young recognized you as New Jersey's Entrepreneur of the Year, the Ernst & Young Award. Let's talk about the bigness of it. It's huge. What did you learn going through the process of the competition that has made you better even today?
I have to give kudos to my kids and my assistant, because Cheryl and I were always believers in leaders eat last, put credit to everybody else and take all the blame. So if we ever had the New York Times calling or whoever, was always to pass that off to the chef or the general manager and allow them to take all the credit. And we always thought, let's just stay in the background and let everybody else get the credit. In this case, I guess in this award process, you have to be nominated, and somebody nominated myself, and they reached out to Rebecca. Rebecca then sent it to me, and I first was, Rebecca, thanks, I'm flattered, it's great, but this isn't something that I would want to take part in. I don't want to put the spotlight on us. Let's put it on the people. She said, oh, okay. What I didn't know was she went back and told my kids, and they were like, let's just fill out the paperwork that's needed to get the process going.
Okay.
Lo and behold, they reach out. We want to come with a team of people and interview at your place of work and take a walk around. And then Rebecca has to come back and tell me
Yeah.
that. When you said no, your kids sort of influenced me, and they said yes, and they want to come interview. They sent 3 people and walked the facility, and they asked a lot of questions, and always trying to be humble and not one to talk about yourself. And that's all they're asking you is about yourself. So it was a little difficult, but we went through the whole thing, and I said, okay, great. Thank you so much. We shook hands, and I'm like, oof, I'm glad that's over. Sure enough, 3 weeks later, they said, look, we want you to come down and go through the next interview process with a team of people and be selected to be one of the people representing Jersey in the hospitality category. Oh, right. So sure enough, I go down and meet with 6 people, and they're asking me all about the importance of the culture of the people. They wanted to know what was different. What's different, Chip, from your organization, from your competitor next door? How can you tell us what you're doing on a day-to-day basis separates you to bring success to your organization? What are those little nuances that you're doing inside the 4 walls? I could sense how intrigued they were with those little nuances.
Talking about systems, culture.
Yeah, exactly. That service model,
Right.
the compensation and how it's distributed. And I'm sharing that story about the hugging culture, and I could see that one of the 6 people starts to well up. I think they just took a liking to what we did inside our business. And after I left there, I thought I was walking out the door again. And then the next thing you know, they said, can you come to New Jersey to a big event and represent? My whole family came to. It was a great night. Driving in the car to go down there, my daughter says, Dad, by the way, if you do win here, you're going to have to get up and say something. I'm like, I'm not going to win. I hadn't even thought about it. And lo and behold, we're at the ceremony, and they had filmed video of our operations, of me in meetings that I knew nothing about. It was really cool, and a great group of people that were in our category and ended up being selected, and then went out to Palm Springs, California for the big event. The whole thing, Don, was a great experience. Ernst Young is an incredible organization. Simon Sinek and Jack Nicklaus, Nance interviewing Jerry Rice and Joe Montana and Barbara Corcoran, the speakers, and the event in itself was such a learning experience that every year we're always saying we got to go back just to experience it.
Yeah. Before the pandemic, your Harvest Restaurant Group was expanding. Things were looking good. Suddenly COVID happens, and we know it affected every industry, but boy, it just turned the restaurant world upside down. How do you manage the challenge of that kind of overnight change? And more importantly, what can we learn about resiliency from what you went through?
It got to a point where we started to say, okay, we're in this for a while. We all believe in our locations. We all believe in our culture. Fortunately, we had a little war chest put together to be able to deal with the financial burden. How do we go forward? The first thing that came to mind was looking for opportunity in adversity. That's what we did. What's the opportunity in this? A lot of people in our industry, a lot of great people that wanted to be close to home and their life was changing have come available for hire. So, it may sound crazy, but we started to look at how we could go about hiring and interviewing people during this time.
Wow.
And start to build our team better. We looked at that as opportunity and started to expand the takeout and then establish the outsides. And the money we had to spend on outdoor tables and umbrellas and setting up those tables in the rain coming. Oh, what an experience.
Oh.
And then we kept on staff. Our operations team through the entire time of COVID, we probably had 25 to 30 people that continued on our team throughout the whole time. And these are 2 of our first employees we ever hired that have worked in our organization for 26 years. This is no time for Harvest to turn its back. And I have to give full credit to all of those teammates, our frontline people that withstood all that. A lot of these people could have been staying at home on that extended unemployment. I remember walking in the back door and saying to one of those guys, 26 years, and saying, "You had 3 kids at home." Like, his answer was, "We feed the community, Chip. This is what we do." And I just sort of gasped like, wow, They came back to work. They didn't need to come back to work, but knowing that they had the potential to make less money, they came back to help us and to get Harvest back up and going.
That's reflection of culture.
Amen.
People come back for culture. There's a high value in being able to create those environments where people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. We feed the community.
Yes.
If you see it that way, then it's not about making meals. It's I feed the community. I love that.
Yeah. My family was down in Adam's Tavern, and I remember we were like, should we stay open? Should we not? It was starting to get really ugly, people getting sick. And I answered the phone, and the customer gave his order. And I said, hey, thanks so much for supporting us. And he said, supporting you? You're the only sense of normalcy that we're feeling right now. What you're doing is bringing normalcy for us and my family at home. It was one of those moments where you go, okay, keep pushing, guys, keep pushing. And sharing that story with the rest of the team, I think, was a good oomph to keep us going.
Chip, you share your stories with your team, gives them power. You share them with the Ernst & Young selection committee, gave you power. I love that. Today, you shared them with us, and that's given us power. I cannot thank you enough for opening yourself up today and being a corporate competitor.
It's an honor, as I said, Don, to always have a discussion with you. And I'm so grateful for the help that I get and learn from everybody else that's out there. I hope if anything I shared will help somebody. Very grateful.
I am like blown away by the amount of good content that our friend Chip just offered us. From the lessons he learned from Jacques Lemaire, was an 8-time Stanley Cup winner. What an awesome opportunity to get a chance to learn from someone that accomplished, to the way he has used those lessons, those opportunities to learn and grow in the development of his own highly successful restaurant chain. He is just the consummate learner. That's the thing that made Chip stand out so greatly to me. And he doesn't just take lessons going to other restaurants to learn from them. He is learning from other industries. He's going to Disney, going to Ritz-Carlton, trying to figure out, where can we go to grow? We don't have to be focused just on those that might be our competitors. We can learn from all walks of life in studying excellence. I was riveted by his discussion about the hugging culture of his organization. Now, in the Harvest Restaurant Group organization, hugs mean just doing something worthy of a hug. We're not saying you have to give hugs, but you have to consistently do the things that are hug worthy. Those moments give the organization a metaphorical high. You are suddenly all there together as part of something big. And in that moment, you are then able to manage the low moments, the tough moments, because they exist for us all. In places where they do those things that draw folks together, you are less likely to come apart when things get tough. I love the lessons today. I grew today. I hope you did too. Let's go out and be corporate competitors. If you've been a listener over the time that we have been together, you understand we talk a lot about feel it moments, those moments where your team feels something special together. It reminds me a lot of the episode number 88 that we did with Jay Billis, in which the former Duke player and now ESPN announcer talked about how those moments drew teams together. If you haven't already done so, remember to download the notes I took from today's session on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/107. Those notes include a reflection question so that you can incorporate our podcast into your personal growth plan. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. we are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.